How's it going, guys? Philip at Trade Genius. All right, we're going to do a Bitcoin update video. So we're going to take a look at this current move up in Bitcoin, see what's in store for the week ahead. We're going to take a look at the Bitcoin gap chart. We're going to look at the Tether and Yuan fuel, take a look at the crypto fear and greed, and also talk a little bit more about the Tether and how much China has been playing a part in all that. So anyway, again, a nice up move here. These money makers have been firing nicely. If you guys are interested in our money maker signal, head over to tradelikeagenius.com and you can get the access to the signal from there. All right, guys, let's dive into this video.
Trade Genius.
All right, guys, let's get right to it. Weekly chart, and very bullish still. We've pressed up into, again, this fib area. The first move up into here, we topped out. We had a doji here, and then we pulled back. Now we're making an engulfing weekly candle. So this was the last close. We're now in the current weekly candle here, but this was very bullish in that it engulfed this last week's down move, okay? The only other thing that would have been nice to see is if this closed above this prior weekly high. In technical analysis, this is known as a swing failure pattern, where you make a new high, but you can't close above the previous high. So that's in play. So what I'd like to see this week would be a close above one of these highs here on this weekly bar. Now, keep in mind, we're starting to see a bearish divergence. So that's when we're making new higher highs and the RSI is not. Specifically, I look at the closes because the RSI is calculated on the close of the candle. So this close is higher than this close, but yet we are making a lower RSI reading. So this is what we were talking about in previous Bitcoin Outlook videos, that on the weekly, that's when we're going to start looking for weakness. And we're starting to see that now. Now, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin's going to roll over here. We could still make higher highs. We could still tag the 10K level and still be in an RSI bearish divergence. So just keep that in mind. There's still fuel in this move. And to be honest with you guys, on the weekly, going back to our moving averages, usually we tag the faster moving average, the WMA20. Again, I like to use the 20 and the 65 as my trend indicators. And basically, we haven't even had a pullback to the 20 yet on the weekly, which currently is at 6,800. So big picture, still very strong in the uptrend. And I think once we start getting up into these areas, I think around that 10K mark, we could possibly, if we did get one final surge to that point, I think that would be probably a strong place to expect a pullback and possibly get down to this WMA20 on the weekly. You'll notice too, we have a nice volume node here. A little hard to see here, but there's a volume node right here as well at the 7,900 level. Talking big picture, guys, if we break through the 10,000 mark, then that's going to bring the 11,000 area into play, and my measurements would say we'd be a little bit north of that if we can breach 10,000. And at that point, strong likelihood that we see a decent pullback. At that point, pullback levels that we'd be looking at would either be around the low 8,000s or the low 7,000s currently. So that's what this current move is projecting out on the larger outlook. All right, let's drill down to the daily. All right, guys, so on the daily, I basically just highlighted the rectangles are just highlighting the areas of consolidation. And these are the areas where people get a little nervous and think that things are going to roll over. When we were, if I move the chart off to the screen, a lot of people, and even I had highlighted that, we look like a head and shoulders formation. However, from my readings, it looked like we were going to continue higher, that the move wasn't over yet. So this is really just more of a consolidation phase in an overall up move. So this would be leg one coming out of the bear market. And at that point, you top out and you rest. And that's basically what we've been saying is, and a lot of this has to do with the Litecoin making that first move, then resting and start rallying again into Q4. 2019, the second half especially, is a very crucial time period for long-term predictions that are out there as far as the speed in which Bitcoin starts making its next bull cycle. And we could potentially see pretty large valuations going into the end of 2019, but the next few months are going to be pretty crucial, I think, as far as those predictions coming true. Right now, we're going to focus on the shorter term stuff, and that's going to be how we react at the end of this move, where we go to. And then for me, that's going to give me a lot more clarity on what the pullback is to be expected, and then the subsequent move higher. But on the daily, we don't really have a divergence. We did get some divergence here, which kind of stalled things out, but not a critical pullback. One thing we talked about is the moving averages here, the faster one and the slower one, and that pulled back. Remember, we said this faster one on a good start of an uptrend will hold, and then you'll break through it and then come down to the slower moving average, which didn't quite get there, but it did pull back there. Now it's resuming. So this is typically when you see that faster moving average get broken, comes down toward the lower moving average and then reclaims the faster one. Usually this will indicate this is the last part of the leg of this move, okay? And that would make sense because that would be like 1, 2, 3, the way I look at this this move here. So basically any dips here, we'd be looking to buy on those and move higher. In the room, we were long from about 7,900 coming off of these moneymaker buy signals and looking at the consolidation was coming to an end here. So we had a really nice up move here. I've trailed our stop up, so we're locking in really decent profits on this trade here. Again, if you want to join us in the room, head over to tradelikeagenius.com. All right, I want to show you guys on the 4-hour chart the comparison to the Chinese yuan. Okay, so as you see here, guys, Yuan has been somewhat leading this move up on Bitcoin. As we got up into this area midway through May, so about a month ago, the devaluation seems to have been topped out. And we did eke out a little higher high on the USD CNH. That means the devaluation was continuing further, which was leading a bit the Bitcoin move here, and then Bitcoin caught back up. Now you notice it's dropped, and I think part of this today was because there was some positive news on the China-US trade relation talks. Trump had tweeted out something positive to the effect that the talks were progressing. So the devaluation, or in other words, the yuan would gain against the USD. So because this is a USD slash CNH, it's going to go down because the yuan, it was favorable for the yuan. So if the yuan is strong, then this correlation, this move, this line drops. So I think that's why we saw that. So we'll see what happens there. And you know, again, we've been kind of following this basically theory that, you know, as things are being, or the Chinese currency is devaluing, they're moving over to Tether and then ultimately into Bitcoin. And I was asked why we thought that, or, you know, how do you know for sure Chinese are buying Tether? But Dyer.co, they have a nice newsletter, pretty informative stuff, but they came out with a chart where they went and looked at the Tether on-chain received by exchanges by region. Okay, so they're looking at the various regional exchanges. Note here, China, right? 62% in second quarter of 2019 of all of the Tether on-chain activity. Globally, there was 36%, and US was a very small percentage of that. So if we look at the Tether chart that we've looked at before, so this is the Tether market cap, which has led the Bitcoin moves, right? So we just had another surge up in Tether market cap, and even though that we're pulling back here on the daily for the Bitcoin price, but this indicates that we still have fuel coming in. And people ask, well, how come shouldn't this be inversely correlated? On the surface, you would think it would. If Tether reserves go down, it would be going into Bitcoin, right? But Tether can be used for different other cryptocurrencies as well, not just Bitcoin. And if you notice, the majority of Tether was from the Chinese market, but you know, other markets have their own local fiat currencies. They don't necessarily have to use Tether. There are also other stable coins. So I think Tether is just one part of the pie, but I think what you're seeing is that when people purchase Tether, you know, they're getting ready to deploy those funds. They don't just necessarily automatically immediately dive Tether into Bitcoin. So what you're seeing is basically onboarding of a stable coin that is getting ready to deploy into BTC. So you'll see a move up, consolidation, Bitcoin moves up, a move up, consolidation, etc. So that's the dynamic I think that's in play there. All right, let's take a look at the crypto fear and greed. And we've had some really high readings, highest we've ever seen. But if you recall, guys, we talked about this, all right? So highest reading we got was 84. We're currently sitting at 83. And this will update in 12 hours from the time of this video. But again, I said, let's see what kind of highs we make. This indicator has only been out during the bear market, and now we're watching the readings as we get into more of this bull market. And again, very high readings. This would indicate to me, guys, that we will see a pullback here. So probably something similar to this, even though this green indicator really dropped quickly and price did not really pull back all that much. But I suspect we might see a pullback here soon. I don't think it changes anything as far as our upward trajectory. I still am eyeballing this 9,800 level for this current move. And again, if we at that point, if we go north of that, and then I think that we'll talk about that when we get there. But I think 9,800 is on the table here. Even if this thing does pull back because of a Bitcoin dip in this current week, that doesn't change anything. And I would expect that we may even see a higher reading. And on that subsequent higher reading, I think that's where you need to start looking at possibly a larger pullback in Bitcoin. But for right now, still, right now we're kind of in discovery mode for a bull market on the fear and greed indicator, but this is getting toppy regardless. And so you just need to be on guard. If you are in a current swing trade on Bitcoin, just trill up those stops. And that's what we've been doing in the room. All right, guys, well, that's pretty much it for this video. Again, I think there's enough fuel there for Bitcoin. Again, Yuan has kind of stabilized and a little bit of a pullback on today's trade news. Now, the other thing to keep in mind for pullbacks, last thing I'll leave you guys with is the Bitcoin gap chart. We do have a gap at 85.15, and the futures are about, I think, $50 or so difference, $50 higher than the actual spot price. So that's going to give you a ballpark 8,500, the low 8,500s to fill that gap. And if we do see that kind of a move, again, that would take us into this volume void. So we could see a dip down to even the 8,200s, and that wouldn't really affect anything, but that would be probably the extent. I think if we did dip and pull back, that would be the lowest I think we would go on a pullback. But that would probably be very, very fast, and it would be an overthrow. I think that BTC gap fill level is probably more realistic. And this is on the daily chart, so it'd be similar to what we saw here. Notice how it just didn't look like that was going to happen, and then all of a sudden a real quick move down, and it was over in a day. Very fast, volatile move. And that's what Bitcoin does when it's uptrending like this. So that's my take on this week's Bitcoin action. We're going to talk about more things later in the week, so keep an eye out for those videos. We'll talk about the Facebook stablecoin, among other things. So look forward to getting that content out to you guys. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.
Trade Genius.